We're going to do our last panel on social media, and that's going to be moderated by a dear friend and colleague of mine, Kallie Fell. Kallie and I have worked together for maybe almost a decade now, and she and I have co-produced and co-written Transmission, What's the Rush to Reassign Gender, the Detransition Diaries, Saving Our Sisters, and then this last year we released The Lost Boys, Searching for Manhood. So I welcome Kallie to come up, and she, like me, is also a nurse, but she happens to deliver the babies, and I always took care of the babies after they were delivered. So welcome, Kallie Fell.
It's so sweet to be introduced by someone that I care so dearly about and who has kind of raised me up in this space. And so thank you for that, and thank you for letting me be here. As she said, I'm going to be talking about social media, and it's widely recognized that social media and unfettered access to online content has played a dangerous and substantial role in the rise in gender dysphoria across this nation and across the globe. In my work through the Center for Bioethics and Culture, through writing and filmmaking, I have had the honor and privilege of talking with detransitioners, of parents, and other experts around the world. And I've come to realize, as anyone else in this room has too, that social media, online communities, and dangerous online content like pornography largely bear responsibility of introducing children to the lie that they were born in the wrong body and that medicine can change their sex. Once introduced to this doctrine, children and adolescents can then find communities and resources that will then usher them and help guide them into steps to social or medically transition without their parents' knowledge. Now that laptops, tablets, and cell phones are in all of our hands and in the hands of our youth, the gender industry will continue to try to use them for their harm and expose them to the worst social contagion of our time. So how do we protect our children? What's the next step? We've had really great progress in these last few weeks and months, but what's the next step? And so that's what this panel is going to discuss today. Today's panel and the last panel will discuss the impact and the role of the government in safeguarding schools and thereby safeguarding children from this dangerous content online. So I'll have the experts come up now, and I'll introduce them once they're here. We have Chloe Cole, who will be speaking, Tiffany Justice, and Claire Morell. So please come up, and then I'll introduce each of you. I like to have faces when I'm introducing people so we can see each of our experts and folks. Thank you. So kind, bringing water up for everyone. So Chloe here, most of you know Chloe, but Chloe Cole is a self-described former trans kid who detransitioned after undergoing years of puberty blockers and irreversible double mastectomy at the tender age of 15 years. Now, an articulate and poised 20-year-old young woman, Chloe draws from her personal experience to shed light on the distressing consequences that we all heard already today of gender-affirming care for adolescents. Chloe has quickly become one of the more powerful voices against transitioning children and travels across the country to share her story and raise alarm bells about gender transition in youth, a growing trend that she herself and others call child abuse and medical experimentation. Tiffany Justice, actually I'll go in order here. Claire Morell is a fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center and director of its Technology and Human Flourishing project. That's a project dedicated to exploring how technology can both advance and undermine human dignity and human flourishing. Her work has been featured in many notable outlets to include, but certainly not limited to, Newsweek, First Things, Public Discourse, The Wall Street Journal, Fox News, Bloomberg News, and others. Ms. Morell frequently consults with legislators in technology policy and has helped draft legislations to protect youth online. She is also, I'm very excited about this, she is also the author of a forthcoming book that I will be one of the first to buy, called The Tech Exit, a practical guide of freeing kids and teens from smartphones. And that will be coming out and published by Penguin Random House in June. So be watching for that and buy that book. And then finally, Tiffany Justice. Tiffany is a wife and mother of 4 school-aged children. In 2016, she stepped in to serve for 4 years on the school district of Indian River County, Florida School Board. She believes that kids in public school deserve innovation, and that parents have the right to know the union interference and the government bureaucracy that's keeping innovation from happening in their children's school district. In 2021, Tiffany co-founded the parental rights group in Florida called Moms for Liberty that has grown to over 130,000 members and 300 chapters nationwide. Well done. Currently, she's a visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation, where she's leading new parental rights initiatives. So please welcome all 3 of our panelists one more time before we get started. So I'm going to start with Chloe. I think it's really, most of us grasp the detrimental effects of having early access to social media and other online content, especially really dangerous online content for youth. And so let's start with you. What role did social media and online content play in your belief that you needed to medically transition?
Well, if it weren't for my underage use of social media,
I think you just have to measure. There we go. Yep.
how do I sound?
Yeah,
There we go. If it weren't for me using social media as an adolescent, I don't think I ever would have transitioned, let alone believe that I was a boy. Before I learned about the transgender community online, much of the content that I was exposed to on social media was, well, it started with stuff that was just based around my own personal interests, stuff like video games, the communities around that, digital illustration, because I've been an artist for as long as I can remember. And I've always loved connecting with other young artists and sharing things like character design and methods for illustration. And it was actually in those same innocent communities that I've been browsing for years that over the years, I started to see more and more transgender-focused content in, and a lot of the members of these communities being transgender young women and men, mostly boys and girls themselves. And it was such a weird segue between the two. And I went from from talking with my friends about games that we played and our hobbies, to them talking about some of their personal struggles with their identities, their body image issues, to eventually discovering this themselves. And because of previous insecurities that they had or these feelings of otherness, eventually deciding that they were transgender. And at first it was something that I was just very curious about, and I didn't really feel any personal connection to. I'd heard the word a few times over like the TV or from adults talking about it, but I didn't really care about it until I started seeing other kids my age. And these weren't celebrities, these weren't just like fake influencers, they were just honest kids and teenagers. And seeing them talk about their experiences and seemingly transform over the years into happier, healthier, more whole individuals, and talking so happily and so excitedly about the transition and finding this community was something that really touched me as a young girl who was pre-adolescent, a little awkward, and was kind of yearning for all of those feelings of having a community, of being able to understand myself and relate to and connect with other kids around me. And eventually became, well, seeing how these kids are just like me, I'm just like them. I must also be transgender. I didn't hear about this in school. I didn't hear about this from a psychologist initially. It came from the internet, from seemingly innocent communities.
So Claire, what laws are in place currently to help protect children from online content? or what model legislation exists or needs to exist to help protect children from social media and other online content?
Yeah, so I've been involved in a lot of state legislative efforts to try to protect kids online. And I think that, the transgender kind of craze and influencer push online is just one subset of a whole suite and host of harms to children online. And so on that note, I've been working in states to both pass age verification for pornography websites, making sure that children under the age of 18 are not able to access pornography websites. And often social media is the first entry point to those harder pornography websites where kids are intaking a lot of trans porn. And I have increasingly kind of studied the intersection of pornography with some of these other harms. And unfortunately, because of the way our brains work, that the pornography industry is increasingly taboo breaking. They're always pushing content that is more and more extreme to give users the same kind of initial high they would have experienced at first. And so it really trends in a very dark, dehumanizing direction. And so trying to protect kids from encountering that online, because studies have shown that a kid can get to Pornhub, one of the major pornography websites, within 5 clicks on Snapchat without ever leaving the app, because a lot of these apps have in-app browsers, and those in-app browsers are often not subject to parental controls that the parent might install on the device. And some apps, Snapchat, TikTok, some of the most kind of notorious apps, don't allow third-party parental control software to operate inside their apps. And so parents are really flying blind and would have no idea that a child would be in Snapchat finding their way to Pornhub. And so now 19 states have passed that law, which means that if a child were to click on Pornhub, they wouldn't actually be able to get through to the website in 19 states. I've also worked on model legislation. And so my organization, the Ethics and Public Policy Center, with others, had put out model legislation for that age verification for porn websites law. And then we also put out a model for states on really restoring more parental oversight to social media. So right now, a child over 13 or even under 13 lying about their age can easily create a social media account by just clicking a box and entering a birth date. So there's no other process to ensure that a minor 8 to 12 isn't getting onto these accounts, or that a parent is part of that process. And in the real world, anytime a minor is entering any type of contract, we expect a parent to be involved. We don't view businesses forming contracts with minors to be legally enforceable, but that has not translated to the online world. And so these social media bills that would require parental consent for a minor to create a social media account have now been passed in 9 states. And more are considering that in this next legislative cycle. And so what we wanted to do is really put the parent back in the driver's seat to have the decision whether or not their child gets on social media. And some of those bills also have requirements for then some type of ongoing parental supervision that would allow a parent to really know what their child is seeing or doing. And so those are 2 kind of state bills that are in effect. And then I've also been involved in some federal efforts. But you asked about the laws currently in effect. And so I would point to those, that 19 states had passed the laws for pornography website and 9 for social media parental consent. And I think those can go a long way to protecting children and empowering parents.
Yeah, it's a good start. It's a good start. So Tiffany, then, what would be the role of the government, or more specifically schools, in protecting children then from harmful content online or social media platforms, even YouTube?
Chloe mentioned that she wasn't introduced to this in school. That's changed. We now have states across the United States of America that are encouraging children to be told, starting in kindergarten, that they may have been born in the wrong body, that perhaps their parents were wrong about something that's very fundamental, and that maybe home isn't safe. Maybe school is their safe place. And so the dynamics have changed. We have a war on children, and one of the major battlegrounds is American public schools. I think ultimately, in all of the things I've been thinking about today, it's the attack on family, the breakdown of family in our culture. I have concerns about social media policies and technology policies, because technology is going to continue to be a major part of our children's lives. And separating them from technology may hinder their ability to be successful in life, because they will have to engage in technology in their work and in our future. It's just a reality that we live in. And so really, I think the breakdown of the family, addressing the issues in our culture, are what's most important here. Because we can pass a lot of laws, but unless we start to safeguard children and protect the innocence of children across the United States of America and value children again, nothing else will really matter. I apologize if I didn't answer your question. I just, it's just been on my heart.
Yeah.
You know, the idea, you know, Erin Friday, one of the first times I spoke with her, she said, the whole transgender ideology is all about self-loathing. It makes the child hate themselves. And it causes this friction between the parent and the parent who loves the child more than anything else in the world. And so I recognize that there are children who come from situations of abuse, and that we do have a breakdown of family. But I think as we make technology a policy across the United States of America, it's very important for us not to usurp the role of parents and parental rights. And I think that there's this urge of legislators, because it's popular and they like votes, to kind of be our daddy. And I don't think that's a good way to make laws. Because we need to empower parents ultimately, and we need to hold the ideal of the parent being in charge of their kids' lives, being in the right place and the right time. And so, you know, I spoke once at a heritage event about TikTok, and it was about banning TikTok, and I said, hey, parents, you don't need to wait for the government to ban TikTok. You just tell them they can't have TikTok. And then if you do it and Claire does it and then all your friends do it, then all of a sudden nobody has TikTok anymore in your kids' social group, and then maybe it's not as important as it was. So really the advice that I have for parents, and I know you didn't ask me this, but I'm going to give it anyway, is,
I like it.
you know, like get in your kids' business. Yeah. Like no phones in their room, no, you know, computers in their room. Make them have it in public spaces. Have access to your kids' phones. There's a bill that Mike Lee has sponsored called the App Store Accountability Act. And it's an important bill because it really does put parents in the driver's seat when it comes to their kids and technology. It makes the parent have to verify their children's age, and when they create the account, and the parent can make sure that the child doesn't have access to those apps if they don't want them on the phone. It creates a private right of action for parents whose children are exposed to sexual content and graphic content in that way. And so I do think that's an important thing for us to focus on. I very publicly came out against a bill in Florida that was HB1. It was the speaker's bill. He was not happy with me. But it banned children from using social media who were 14 and 15. And it didn't matter if the parent wanted them to use it or not. Now, personally, my 15-year-old doesn't have a phone. My older two got phones when they were about 14. The 15-year-old's very mad at me because I won't let him get a phone. And I said, well, I'm an adult and a parent. I don't have to keep making the same mistakes again. I'm allowed to stop making mistakes. But you know, I don't think it's the government's place, honestly, to limit your child's access. I think we have to empower the parent and hold, with parental rights come parental responsibilities. And I think we've forgotten a little bit about that. So as a society, I would just say turning towards really, you know, ensuring that parents have the fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their children, but we're holding parents responsible for also protecting their kids. It's very important.
Thank you.
I'd like to add on that note. I mean, I feel like just a few years ago, and we've come a long way from a lot of older adults not really fully understanding just the dangers that are present on the internet for children and young adolescents.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so glad that there are resources and so much information coming out about this now, so that parents of today can shield their children and stop them from being exposed to all of this. Because I mean, while we're on the note of parental notification and schools, a lot of my initial social media usage, and even a lot of my first exposure to hardcore pornography, was on school-issued devices. Now, a lot of school districts will issue these devices without any proper protections or firewalls or anything for that, for the children and students who are using it. And they advertised to the parents, to my mom and dad, these devices, these laptops, as being properly proctored and monitored and content on it being blocked for the first, I think, like 5 or so years, 5 to 6 years of these devices being used by students in my school district. You could access anything you wanted as long as you were using a Wi-Fi network that was outside of the school district. So you could go home, you could message other students, and students would often get caught sexting each other, talking about inappropriate stuff with each other through chat rooms. But we also were allowed to access inappropriate websites. And I also want to talk about the connection of pornography to transgenderism. The connection between that and paraphilias in males has been talked about a little bit today. But I want to talk about this from the young female perspective, which is kind of the opposite. The pornography of today that many children are being exposed to, it's not like accidentally finding like your dad's Playboy magazine. This is hardcore, often violence, and even heavily sexist imagery and videos that little boys and girls are being exposed to. And a lot of the young women in here today can attest to this, that it's one of the many things that made us want to escape from our femininity. So it is absolutely the responsibility of parents to be empowered, to be in the know about what is actually going on their child's device and how to prevent them from seeing it.
Yeah. I think it's so important, like Chloe talks about, and I'm just going to say, we had recently the Tate brothers enter Florida. And you have them being glorified by so many people, being told, oh, I really respect you, or, hey, man, welcome to the States, right? They abuse women. They traffic young women. They have videos of them abusing women while they have sex with them and saying that women like it. Like, first of all, go home, Tate brothers. Nobody wants you in America. Amen. But our society has to change. It's not cool. It's not fun. It's not macho to, choke a woman while you're having sex with her and hit her. And until we stand up and we really fight back against that, and we see legislators, we see the president, we see people around him stand up and say, no, that's not okay with us. We don't hurt kids. We've got a big problem. So we all have to stand up and push back against that.
Yeah. And can I just jump in? I want to say, just first of all, the App Store Accountability Act that Tiffany mentioned is really important, and it actually has passed into law in Utah. So states aren't waiting on the federal government either to say that we want parents involved in what kids are downloading onto their phone, that a parent should be the one deciding what apps they have or not. And there's been bad loopholes around this because some of the built-in settings, have said that they'll notify the parent if the child is trying to download an app, but if the parent later decides that app is super harmful, I want to delete that off your device. This is like a commonly known loophole for Apple, that if they had given consent originally, the child can just re-download it from the App Store without the parent knowing. And so these laws are very important about putting the parent back in the driver's seat over their child's device experience. And on the pornography front, I really feel for parents because they are often doing everything they can to protect their child. And what is challenging is that with a smart device or smartphone, there are thousands of portals of entry to these pornography websites that are just nearly impossible for parents to completely shut down. And so that is why we've also tried to, with legislators, back parents up by saying it's on the pornography websites to make sure children aren't accessing this extremely violent and dehumanizing content. And so it's both. Parents are always on the front line, but we also do need laws that will back them up. And so that is why 19 states have now passed this, and I really want to see it on a federal level. And Senator Lee and a companion bill in the House have introduced again for a third time the SCREEN Act that would pass age verification for porn websites on a national level.
I think for so long we've had this idea that we can trust schools and we can trust them with the care of our children, and then now that they're handing out devices and we're learning that we can't, that parents really do, we can't, it's not a time for lazy parenting.
Can we talk about the schools for a second?
Absolutely, go ahead.
There is an intentional drive to sexualize children in our public schools. It is being done on purpose. They are, everybody wants to say, oh, the Karens who want to ban the books. Have you looked at these books? One of the books has a guide to how to get onto Tinder and find people to have sex with if you're a kid. I mean, there's this intentional drive to sexualize children, and I continue to say the least interesting thing about a child should be their sexual orientation. And I watch these beautiful... one of the things that strikes me about all of the detransitioners is you guys are so smart. You are these are some of the smartest kids in these classes. And why are you being driven to these other things? Because public schools do not elevate gifted students. They do not find ways to help them to excel, to find their interests. They dumb them down. And because we're not creating opportunities to really unfold your full potential in life, the kids are stagnating. And so the whole culture in public schools is so antithetical to human flourishing. And we really, as parents, have to step up and say, no, I'm going to hold you accountable to unfold the full potential of my child. I'm not going to, let you stagnate in a classroom. And that was really striking to me. I want to just mention one other thing. A couple things today that were takeaways. The Defining Abuse Child Protection Act, Jay Richards moderated the first panel. That's a very important bill that says that, and you can pass this in your states, that says that it's not abuse to affirm your child's natural biological sex. And that's just such an important, I know it seems very silly, but it's such an important step for us to be able to take. The other thing, Dr. Patrick Butler, we have to hold the American Academy of Pediatrics accountable parents. If you take your child to the doctor and that doctor wants you to leave the room, you tell them absolutely not. You don't need to fill out the ridiculous AAP survey. Say no. When your child is going to school, send a note to your child's school that says, I do not want my child meeting with any other adults besides the teacher without my knowledge and consent, and hold them to it. We really have to step up as parents and take the bull by the horns and say, this is our child, and we are not going to let you disrespect our family or my child.
Yeah, thank you. We've kind of gone off of
Sorry.
the tech. No, it's an important point, and I'm grateful that you said that. But to bring it a little bit back in, I just want to Chloe, to highlight the role of apps and chat groups and forums on advising children after they've already kind of bought the lie that maybe they are born in the wrong body, and the role of algorithms that reinforce these specific narratives that children are seeing.
So the general culture in these online spaces around transgenderism that I was in was that it's all focused around euphoria and chasing the things that supposedly will make you happy, which in this case, it starts with socially transitioning. It starts with finding a new name that makes you happy, that makes you feel more like yourself, asking other people to refer to you by different pronouns, by the opposite sex, by whatever you identify as. And then you make physical changes to yourself through your haircuts. It starts with these very benign things that eventually devolve into more and more sinister, more cruel things. Eventually, as a child, you start on the process of blocking your puberty. And eventually, for these children who are blocked, or for these adults going into it, they end up going on the cross-sex hormones. And then eventually you get surgery, which in these online spaces, one of the things that I saw glorified the most was not only the physical changes from testosterone, but also the top surgery scars. Yeah. I would see people drawing young girls as angels with wings, with halos, with their bare, scarred chest out. All these illustrations and selfies and different forms of artwork just glorifying what ultimately is medical self-harm. And it makes you feel like, wait, these people are so happy, and maybe I'm not so happy, but I can find that through doing this to myself. I can follow them, and I've finally found this means through which I can build my identity and build myself on it. And I mean, on a basic level, these algorithms work by showing you what you interact with most. And This kind of thing especially appeals to kids or young people who are different in some way, who may already have different identity issues of their own, with either being on the autistic spectrum, with having these other comorbid psychiatric issues, or just feeling othered in some way. It speaks to those of us who may be more artistic or want to find some other means of expressing ourselves. And recently we've seen how different apps like Facebook and Instagram have actually been incentivizing posts and accounts who promote this ideology to continue doing so.
And Claire, how do we protect children from these irreversible procedures pushed by this tech influence, and also balance free speech and responsible information sharing by platforms?
Yes, this is definitely, I think, the biggest tension is wanting to protect children without infringing on adults' rights or access to speech. And so what I often explain is that now age verification technologies have advanced so much that there are ways that we can determine whether someone is a minor or not online in a way that's still very privacy protecting for adults. So I love to point to an example in Louisiana because to enforce their Louisiana anti-porn law for minors, the age verification law keeping kids off of pornography websites, they already had a digital driver's license system in place called Louisiana Wallet, so that adults could register for a digital version of their license. And then if they were trying to access an adult website, they could just say that they have the Louisiana Wallet, and it would tell them to open their app that has that license in it. And then all they have to do is then it generates a code for them. They input it into the website. And so what happens is it gets communicated to the website, yes, this person is over 18. That's all the information transferred. It knows nothing about you besides that. And so it actually is very privacy protective and not burdensome on adults in a process that takes 40 seconds, but yet is so effective because no children have access to this digital driver's license. And so that's just one example, but the technology has advanced so much that I feel like we often get kind of experience opposition for some of the bills that I've worked on because of that concern. And I would just say that we are so technologically advanced that there are ways that we can do this, but the companies and the websites have not been compelled to do it. And so the kind of myth that, we can't do this in a way that won't burden adults is really that. It's a myth. And so I've tried to explain that in my work, that it's possible to protect kids and to protect adults' rights and access to speech. And the same for social media. I'll just briefly say, since I think this is probably my last point, that I agree 100% with Tiffany that parents are on the front lines and that you don't have to wait on policy solutions to say, I'm going to take this smartphone away, even if you already gave it. It's never too late to reverse a decision and explain to your child, look, I was wrong. I didn't understand, but I am your parent. It is my job to protect you. And this device, this app, this social media platform is not good for you. And I want what's best for you. I want your flourishing. And so my book, The Tech Exit, really walks parents through how to detox from these things if you have already given them to your kids, and encourages parents to really delay social media and smartphones as close as possible to adulthood. And it's not to say you can't give them a different kind of phone as a communication tool. I recommend alternative phones that are much more protective for children, alternatives to smartphones. And I really encourage parents to find other families and how to do that through your school, through your community, through your church, so that your child is not the only one without these technologies, but you can be the solution, the kind of collective solutions that are needed because of how social media changes so much the social environment for kids in their school or their community, that it really will take parents banding together on the front lines. And so that is the message of my book, and it's very positive and hope-filled with lots of stories and examples of how parents have done this, and encouraging parents that it is possible and is best for our children to do that for them.
Well, thank you all so much. I think that ends our panel discussion and the day, so I'll welcome Jennifer back up. Thank you.